Welcome to the Weird and Wicked podcast. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Kristen.
And we're two sisters with a passion for the mysterious and the unknown. On our podcast, we'll explore killer cases and the most puzzling phenomena.
Come with us down the rabbit hole where we'll take a magnifying glass to the most bizarre, unnerving, and unbelievable stories. From true crime and conspiracy theories to ghosts and cryptids, we'll cover it all.
Today we'll be talking about one of the most well-known steamships in history.
And no, not the Titanic, although it does play a sliver of a role here, so stay tuned.
Right, and this story is equally as intriguing, if not more. Today we're going to be exploring the history and hauntings of the RMS Queen Mary.
This episode is definitely more lighthearted than some of the topics we've covered in the past, but we do delve into some of the history and events that took place on the ship itself. So stick with us because it's a super interesting story, and I think you'll all enjoy hearing it.
So today our story begins with a man named Samuel. Already we're off to a bad start. Samuel Cunard, is that right? Cunard?
I think so.
He was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia in 1787 and was the son of a successful merchant. Growing up, Samuel developed a keen interest in shipping and maritime trade, and he soon began to make a name for himself in this industry. In 1838, he founded the British and North American Royal Mail Steam Packet Company, which later became known as the Cunard Line. Much better name, if I do say so myself.
Yes. It was shorter.
Easier to say. The Cunard Line was established to provide regular mail and passenger service between Great Britain and North America. And it quickly became one of the most successful shipping companies in the world. And Samuel became one of the most successful shipping businessmen in the world. One of his most significant achievements was the development of the transatlantic steamship in 1840. The company launched its first transatlantic steamship, the RMS Britannica, which was faster, more reliable, and more comfortable than any previous ship.
I think it's Britannia.
Oh,
you're
right.
Said Britannica. Library
Britannica. Britannia.
Yeah.
To clarify.
The fleet also included the RMS Acadia, RMS Caledonia, and RMS Columbia. These ships were the first to offer regular, scheduled transatlantic steamship services between Liverpool, Halifax, and Boston, and they quickly became popular with passengers and mail shippers alike. For 30 years, Cunard held the blue ribbon for the fastest Atlantic voyage. In doing research, I saw this term blue ribbon and I was like, what the fuck is that? So I looked it up and it was a prestigious accolade given to the passenger liner that set the record for the fastest transatlantic crossing by steamship. The term blue ribbon originates from the blue ribbon that was worn by the champion of a horse race. And in those times, it was spelled R-I-B-A-N-D, but it can also be spelled R-I-B-B-O-N, like ribbon as we know it.
Okay.
The award was first introduced in the 1830s and was awarded to ships that crossed the Atlantic Ocean in the fastest time. I think I already said that, but initially the award was open to any ship, but later it was restricted to passenger liners. Many famous ships competed for the blue ribbon, including the RMS Titanic and the SS United States. The last ship to hold
so well for the Titanic.
Yeah, no, it didn't last very long. The last ship to hold the blue ribbon was the SS United States, which set the record in 1952 and still holds it today. The award has not been officially awarded since the 1950s, as the rise of commercial air travel and the decline of ocean liner travel made it less significant. So the Cunard Line held this award for 30 straight years until two other steamship companies attained the award with 3 different voyages between 1850 and 1854. And in a race to continue its reputation as one of the best steamship companies in the world, the Cunard Line began plans for its very first iron paddler, the RMS Persia.
A little ship gossip for ya. This pressure to keep the lead may have contributed to the disappearance of the Collins Line's RMS Pacific. It is said that a few days before Persia was supposed to make her maiden voyage, the captain of the Pacific pushed the vessel to the absolute max, far beyond what it was intended to handle. The Pacific was never seen again after this voyage, which led to people to assume that during that particularly bad winter, there probably was an extreme lack of visibility and it most likely ran into an iceberg and sank.
Right. Yeah. So it's like it's not for sure that that actually happened because they never even found the ship
It's just
to this
assumed.
day. But
That's
yeah, it was
wild.
a bad winter, so they just assume that it probably sunk after
Mhm.
hitting iceberg, much like the Titanic.
Mm.
um, and just as expected, a few months later, the Persia took the blue ribbon for a voyage it made from Liverpool to New York, which lasted just 9 days and 16 hours, averaging 13.11 knots. Throughout the rest of the 1800s and the early 1900s, the battle between steamship companies to be the very best continued on and on.
In the late 1920s, the Cunard Line faced yet another threat to their seat as one of the top ocean liner companies in the world. The French line, which later produced the SS Normandy, had prominent vessels in their fleet and were growing in popularity. Cunard's answer to the growing pressure to improve was to begin plans for a 75,000-ton vessel, which at the time they called Hull number 534. But growing economic crisis halted the business process.
But they had to find a way to stay afloat. No pun intended.
Love it. To complete their upcoming number 534 project, Cunard applied and received a loan from the British government, but there were a few conditions attached. To receive the loan, Cunard had to merge with the White Star Line, who had recently been forced to cancel construction of their most recent project, the RMS Oceanic, which would have been an 80,000-ton vessel. The merger commenced in 1934 and work on hull number 534 resumed. Not only did the loan give the newly formed Cunard White Star Line enough money to finish this ship, but it was also enough to build a sister vessel too. The ships would be a part of a two-ship weekly express service between Southampton, Cherbourg, and New York.
So the actual name of hull number 534 was kept a really good secret until its launch, and there's some legend behind it. Cunard had originally planned to name the ship the RMS Victoria, which would fall in line with the company's standard of naming all of their ships names that end in IA. At some point during the process of construction, company executives asked Britain's king if they would name it after, or if they could name it after Britain's, quote, greatest queen. Though it seemed that the king didn't quite understand the reference because when asked, he said that his wife, Mary of Teck, would be delighted.
I
So,
can just imagine the looks on their faces when the king was like, "Sure, my wife is going to be so happy that you're naming this ship after her."
right. And they,
When
of
it's like,
course, had no choice but to name it the RMS Queen Mary.
it's great.
Um,
Whether this is a true story or not, it's just kind of funny to think that this would have been how naming the ship went down. Like they didn't even
right.
intend it to be named this at all.
Yes. And a little additional fun fact, the White Star Line is the same company who launched the RMS Titanic in 1912. We all know about that one, though.
We all know a little bit too much about that one.
But it's kind of interesting they're the same exact company.
Yeah, agreed.
When construction was complete, the RMS Queen Mary was over 1,000 feet long with a beam of 118 feet and a gross tonnage of over 80,000 tons. It was the largest and most luxurious ship of its time, and it took 3 years to build at a cost of $40 million.
Jeez. We are always super excited to learn about obscure conspiracies, creepy ghost stories, and really anything that will keep us up at night. So if you have something you'd like us to cover, fill out our case submission form on our website. Now back to the show.
The design of the Queen Mary was inspired by the Art Deco style that was popular in the 1930s. The ship's interior was a tribute to the glamour and elegance of the era, with luxurious materials like marble, bronze, and exotic woods used throughout. When it came to facilities, the ship offered two indoor swimming pools, beauty salons, libraries, children's nurseries, a music studio and lecture hall, telephone connectivity to anywhere in the world,
That's crazy.
outdoor paddle tennis courts, and dog kennels. It also had a main dining room, which was a total of 3 stories in height, and many air conditioned public rooms for all the passengers on board. So it's kind of like a cruise ship.
Yeah,
It's more like what our cruise ships are like
more
today.
luxurious and
Hmm.
more
There's
like
amenities.
decorated.
Yeah.
One of the most impressive features of the Queen Mary was its 2-story grand salon. The room was over 100 feet long and featured a 25-foot high ceiling with ornate chandeliers and intricate plasterwork. The walls were adorned with murals and paintings by famous artists of the time, and the room was often used for concerts and other special events. Perhaps the coolest aspect of this room was that it contained a large map of the ship's 2 routes. Along the routes on the map, a miniature motorized model of the ship would indicate to passengers where the ship was along its course so they could see the progress of their travels. The Queen Mary also had a cabin class dining room called Veranda Grill. Is that right? Yeah, Veranda
Yeah.
Grill, which was an exclusive a la carte restaurant and was converted to the Starlight Club during the evening. Accommodations on the ship ranged from first class staterooms that were fully equipped and luxurious to third class staterooms which were more cramped. The Queen Mary's exterior design was just as impressive as its interior. The ship had a sleek, streamlined profile that was designed to maximize its speed and efficiency. The ship's 4 smokestacks were angled slightly forward to reduce drag, and its hull was painted black to reduce its visibility at night. The ship was also equipped with the latest technology, including a state of the art engine room and the most advanced navigation equipment of the time.
So this was like revolutionary,
Hmm.
this ship.
Amazing technology that they're putting on
Yes,
this.
yeah. Especially the fact that you have cell phone, or not cell phone. That the fact that you have telephone connectivity
Telephone to the
to
whole
anywhere in
world.
the world. That's crazy.
Wild.
Needless to say, the ship was vastly popular due to its elegance and quickly became a favorite among celebrities, politicians, and other prominent people. One of which was Winston Churchill. When did I say? I think I
Yeah,
said that so weird.
you did.
One of which was Winston Churchill, who was named in the passenger manifest as Colonel Worden, and later quoted after World War II that the Queen Mary had shortened the war by a year, which is a great segue into the next segment of this story. In 1939, the Queen Mary was en route to New York City. Once docking in New York, the beginning of World War II had been declared, and its commercial use was suspended. It stayed docked alongside its rival, the SS Normandy. In 1940, the two were joined by the RMS Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mary's sister ship, after her secret voyage from Clydebank. For some time, the 3 largest liners sat idle in the port of New York City until Allied commanders made plans for them to be converted into troop ships. And there's actually a really cool photo of the 3 of these ships together in the
Together
port. It's just, it's super cool because they were the 3 biggest and best ships in the world, all in the
at the
same port,
time.
right next to
Yeah,
each other.
that is cool.
So you can imagine how like crazy it would be to witness that in
Hmm.
real life. This involved a complete overhaul of the ship. Her interior decor and furniture were removed and replaced with bunk beds for troops, and the woodwork in the cabin class dining room, staterooms, and other public areas were covered with leather. A total of 6 miles of carpet, 220 cases of china, crystal, and silver items, tapestries, and paintings were stored in warehouses during the war.
That's crazy.
Right?
That I wonder how much time that took because that's a lot of stuff to
Yeah.
take out and then change the interior.
Mhm. I don't know how long it took to fit it for being a troop ship, but I know that later on when it was converted back into a passenger ship, I think it took like a year or two, or
Oh, wow.
at least a year, I think,
To, like,
to
redecorate it.
yeah,
Oh my
bring it
god.
back to what it was.
Mhm.
So you can imagine how long of a process. But maybe they were in a hurry to like get it running,
Get it
so
ready.
who knows.
That would suck, like, you built this ship, and it's getting, like, torn apart just to go to
Yeah,
war
it's really
or, like,
sad.
house troops.
At least they stored a lot of the furniture and
Yeah.
stuff. The ship's staterooms and public spaces were replaced with dormitories and mess halls to accommodate thousands of troops. The ship's luxurious amenities, such as the swimming pool and grand ballroom, were replaced with workshops and storage facilities. The ship was also fitted with heavy duty cranes and equipment to handle military cargo and vehicles. The
That's
Queen Mary's,
wild.
right?
Jeez.
Yeah, cranes and military vehicles, even too. It's crazy.
It's really weird to think about because I can't imagine, like, completely overhauling this thing and
Yeah.
having, like, heavy machinery and whatnot
All
on
of
it.
like the luxury of it is just gone. Like leather
Gone.
is covering all of the woodwork.
Yeah.
At least they made an attempt to preserve it.
Yeah,
So,
that's good. The Queen Mary's speed and size made it an ideal transport vessel for the military. She was said to have been the fastest and largest vessel during the war. The ship's top speed of 30 knots allowed it to outrun enemy submarines, while its length of 1,019 feet made it one of the largest and most impressive ships in the world. She was used to transport troops to and from the front lines in Europe and Asia, as well as to carry military equipment and supplies. During her conversion to a troop ship, the Queen Mary got a fresh paint job. Her hull, superstructure, and funnels were painted navy gray. As a result of her new paint job and sheer speed, the Queen Mary gained a brand new nickname, the Gray Ghost, which is also really cool.
that's a sick nickname.
I love
The
it.
Gray Ghost.
Not only was she quick, she could also carry record numbers of troops. In 1943, the ship set the record for carrying the most passengers, 16,683 people. To this day, the Queen Mary still retains this record. In fact, the largest cruise ships of today only carry up to just under 7,000 passengers.
Isn't that
That's
crazy?
crazy.
Like more
Like
than double that amount she was
how
taking.
how did they fit is my question.
I read that they had to like sleep on the deck, and there were like
Oh my
little
god, that would suck.
fitted sleeping bags and stuff, I'm
Mhm.
sure, but
Oh
it's
man.
insane.
Tragedy struck in 1942, however, when the Queen Mary was carrying thousands of American troops to join the Allied forces in Europe. Off the coast of Ireland, the Queen Mary collided with an escort ship called the HMS Curacoa.
I think it's Curacoa.
Curacoa.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
On October 2nd, the Queen Mary was on her way to join a convoy in the Atlantic, carrying around 10,000 American soldiers. At the same time, the HMS Curacoa, a light cruiser, was on escort duty for the same convoy. As the Queen Mary approached, the Curacoa, following standard procedure, began zigzagging to create a smokescreen to protect the convoy from German submarines. But the Queen Mary, being a much faster ship, was catching up with the Curacoa quickly.
I remember hearing about this now.
hmm
Oh my
The
god, that's
captain,
wild.
so the captain of the Queen Mary, thinking the Curacoa was getting out of his way, maintained his course. It was too late when he realized that this was not the case, and the smaller ship was still in the way. The Queen Mary collided with the Curacoa, basically slicing through the cruiser, cutting it in half, basically.
Jeez.
Because the risk of the U-boat attacks, or sorry, because of the risk of the U-boat attacks, the Queen Mary was ordered to continue sailing without stopping under any circumstances,
Mm,
so it steamed on. Out of the 338 crew members on board the Curacoa, only 108 survived this
that's so
incident.
sad.
Yeah, it's crazy. They literally could not stop because there was such a risk of
Yeah, of
being
being
attacked.
attacked.
So they just had to keep sailing through the wreckage, which is like chilling.
Yeah. That's probably why, like, not that many people survived.
Right, yeah.
Well,
It
not that you
was
could stop that quickly either in a
right.
steam cruiser, whatever they call them. But
Mhm.
oh my god, that's
A
really
steamship, yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it would be crazy to I mean like how do I put this? It's not just crazy. It'd be really frightening to be on that smaller
Yes.
ship and then you just get cut in half and then you're basically just like even if you survive, you're just out in the middle of the water
Oh my god.
and the boat that just cut you in half is just continuing on,
Continuing
not
on,
stopping
and
for you.
everyone that was on the ship with you is drowning
Yeah.
left and right. Oh my
I think
god.
it was near a port, so I think
Oh,
they like called for help and those 108 were rescued, but
okay.
it's crazy that only 108 out of 338 people
Mhm.
survived. The Queen Mary, meanwhile, sustained minor damage and managed to continue on to her destination. The American soldiers on board were actually kept in the dark about the incident and were only told about it after the war was over. The incident led to controversy and an inquiry. The British government initially denied responsibility for the collision, but after a public outcry, they accepted liability and paid compensation to the families of the victims. So that's good at least. Like at first
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh, this isn't our fault." But
Yeah, keep
then
it hush hush.
people got really mad. So
Mhm.
which brings us to yet another tragedy which actually happened to a man by the name of John Petter on board the Queen Mary.
John Petter was a young and enthusiastic engineer who had just joined the crew of the Queen Mary in 1940. He was assigned to work in the engine room and was excited to be a part of the team that operated the Grand Ocean Liner. However, his enthusiasm soon turned to tragedy when he became the victim of a watertight door accident on the ship. On the fateful day of July 10th, 1942, the Queen Mary was heading towards Scotland, escorted by a number of other vessels. The ship was traveling at a high speed of 28 knots. I was going to say 208 knots. That's really
God
fast.
damn. That ship is zooming.
So the ship was traveling at a high speed of 28 knots, which was necessary to evade German U boats that lurked in the Atlantic. John Petter was working in the engine room when he was asked to check the watertight doors. His job was to ensure that all the doors were properly closed and secure to prevent any water from entering the ship in case of emergency. Petter reached watertight door number 13, which was located on the starboard side of the ship. He was checking the door. The ship suddenly made a sharp turn, causing the door to close on him. Petter was trapped between the door and its frame, with the full weight of the door pressing against him. Petter's colleagues tried frantically to open the door, but to no avail. The door had been designed to be watertight, which meant that it was incredibly heavy and could not be opened easily. The ship's captain, aware of the situation, ordered the engines to be stopped and the ship to be turned around, hoping to release the pressure on the door. However, it was too late. Petter had already suffered severe injuries, and his colleagues could do nothing to save him. He died just a few hours later from his injuries.
Mm, it's
So sad.
crazy.
I couldn't imagine being the people with him just trying your best to
Yeah.
open it and
Ugh, and
not
he's
being
just
able
stuck
to.
under there. Yeah.
Another
And
strange.
those doors are really heavy.
Oh my
So
god. Yeah,
I can only imagine. Ugh.
it would be impossible, I feel like.
Yeah.
Another strange death was that of a man named W.E. Stark.
W.E. Stark was a wealthy businessman who, in 1935, had booked passage on the Queen Mary, the most luxurious ocean liner of its time. Stark was a man of refined tastes, and he looked forward to the elegant dinners and cocktails that the ship was famous for.
I want to try one.
I know. On the third day of the voyage, Stark ordered a gin and tonic from the ship's bar. The bartender, not wanting to disappoint a distinguished guest, used the finest ingredients he had on hand. He used a new tonic syrup that had just been added to the ship's inventory, and he added a generous amount of gin to the mix.
Sounds like
Stark.
our bartenders on the cruise.
Right, yeah.
Glug, glug, glug,
Those gin
glug,
and
glug.
tonics were like
Some of them were
doubles.
just straight up bad.
Yeah, some of them were really bad. Um, oh well. Stark, savoring the taste of his drink, ordered another and then another. He enjoyed the drinks so much that he continued ordering them well into the night, losing track of how many he had consumed. Little did he know the tonic syrup was laced with toxic levels of quinine. I think that's how you say it, quinine, a substance that is used to treat malaria. In high doses, quinine can cause severe side effects, including nausea, dizziness, and even death.
Oh my
By the
god.
next, oh God, Arya. By the next morning, Stark had fallen gravely ill. He was suffering from severe abdominal pain, vomiting, and
mm.
confusion. The ship's doctor was called to his cabin and immediately recognized the symptoms of quinine poisoning. Stark was rushed to the ship's medical center, where he received urgent treatment.
He
The
was rushed
doctor
to the hospital.
was rushed to the hospital. Oh my god. He was rushed to the ship's medical center, where he received urgent treatment.
You caught it at least.
The doctors worked tirelessly to save him, administering antidotes and trying to stabilize his condition, but it was too late. The quinine had already done irreparable damage to his system, and he passed away a few days later.
Oh my
Now,
god.
I know, yeah,
I didn't
he
know
must have drank
this.
a lot of it. Now, the ship is said to be haunted by ghosts of those who perished on board, and their spirits linger in the halls and cabins, seeking to make their presence known.
That's wild.
Yep.
Why was
Which
that
we'll
even
go
near
into
the
a little bit more later, too, but
Okay. Why was that even near the bar?
I don't know. Somehow this new tonic substance
Had
was
it.
laced with the
Oh,
quinine.
okay.
Somehow. It's kind of a mystery. Some people
Like
speculate that
how?
he was poisoned, like maybe by the bartender or maybe by somebody there.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Okay.
Because it was like some special tonic that had
I
just been
see.
added. So there's like a little bit of conspiracy around it, but
The bartender's like, I got the best tonic water for you
yeah.
specifically.
Right.
After the war was over in September of 1946 through July of 1947, the Queen Mary was converted back into a passenger ship, and the Cunard White Star Line was also renamed once more to just Cunard. That's a little bit of a blow to the White Star Line.
I know, yeah. It's just Cunard now.
Hand in hand with the Queen Elizabeth, their two-ship express service was extremely popular and made Cunard highly profitable even into the 1950s. Although at that point air travel was growing in popularity due to its significantly shorter travel times. With just a 7 to 8 hour flight from New York to London, the demand for sea travel decreased. It became more frequent that the Queen Mary would carry more crew than passengers, and by 1965, Cunard was losing money fast. It was then that both the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth were retired from service. Many bids were submitted, but the Queen Mary was eventually sold to Long Beach, California for $3.45 million.
That's a lot.
That is a lot of money. What year was this again? 65? Jeez.
Yeah. And even like it was originally built for 40 million, I think we said earlier,
Yes.
and it was bought for 3.45, which isn't a lot compared to how much they spent on it to begin with.
Exactly.
But there was no use for like an ocean liner
Hmm.
like that anymore. There were newer, better ships coming out even then.
Hmm.
Um, but even after that, like people wanted to take jets.
Yeah.
So
It was then in 1967 that she made her 1001st and last voyage. Departing from Southampton, England on a crisp morning, the iconic ocean liner embarked on a farewell journey that would forever be etched in maritime history. The final voyage of the Queen Mary was a reminder of her remarkable service in transporting 2,112,000 passengers over 3,792,227 miles throughout the years.
it's crazy.
That's a lot of people.
Yes.
The retirement of the RMS Queen Mary marked an end of an era. After decades of service as a luxury ocean liner and later as a troop ship during World War II, the Queen Mary bid farewell to her active years and embraced a new chapter in her life. Docked permanently in Long Beach, California, the ship was transitioned into a magnificent floating hotel and museum, preserving her grandeur and allowing visitors to immerse themselves in her rich history and ghostly tales.
Which brings us to the hauntings. The
Yes.
stories of hauntings aboard the Queen Mary are numerous and varied. Some say that the ghost of John Petter, the man who was crushed by watertight door 13, can still be heard working on the machinery, while
Mm.
others claim to have seen the ghostly figure of a woman in white wandering the decks, her ethereal form fading away into the mist. According to another tale, a young girl was swimming in the pool aboard the Queen Mary when she somehow drowned. The tragedy of her death has left a lasting impression on the ship, with many people reporting sightings of her ghostly apparition over the years. Some people claim to have seen the little girl's ghostly figure playing around the pool area, while others have reported hearing the sound of her laughter echoing through the corridors of the ship. The legend of this little girl has become so well known that many visitors to the Queen Mary specifically seek out the pool area in the hopes of catching a glimpse of her ghost. And it's kind of unclear whether like this story is even true. It's just
Hmm.
kind of because there's no record of a little girl drowning in the pool on the Queen Mary,
Oh,
but
yeah.
people often see her apparition. So, and it's typically around the pool area, so it's widely assumed that something happened to a little girl, probably drowning in the pool.
Hmm. In addition to these tales, there are sometimes eerie whispers and footsteps that can be heard in the deserted halls and empty cabins, as if the ghosts of long dead passengers are still on board, unable to find rest. Many visitors of the Queen Mary have reported strange experiences from unexplained cold spots and sudden drops in temperature to doors that open and close by themselves. Some have even claimed to have seen apparitions and heard ghostly voices, causing a chill to run down their spine. Despite the ship's haunting reputation, there are those who still flock to the Queen Mary, eager to experience the thrill of encountering a ghost. Some even say that they feel a strange sense of comfort in the presence of the spirits, as if they are not alone on the ship.
Whether the hauntings are real or simply a product of an overactive imagination, the Queen Mary remains a source of fascination and intrigue for many. Her ghostly inhabitants continue to capture the imagination of visitors from all over the world, and their stories will continue to be told for generations to come. Still to this day, you can go tour or stay on the Queen Mary, though she won't take you anywhere except back in time.
I want to
I
go so bad.
Yes, this is on my bucket list. I want to go
Same.
visit. I want to go stay on the Queen
Oh,
Mary
me too.
and
I
just do a
forget
little
what room it
ghost hunt.
is. Yeah. There's supposed to be like one main haunted room that you can
Mhm.
stay in. We need to go
Yeah.
there.
Yes. There's like
But
nothing in the room, but you can. go and stay. And I think BuzzFeed Unsolved, when BuzzFeed Unsolved went, they stayed in that room. They like took
Mhm.
sleeping bags with them. They did a
Yeah.
full ghost hunt, obviously, but there's a lot of people who, a lot of ghost hunters who love this
Yeah.
story because it's such an active area
Location.
for paranormal activity.
Not just that, like putting the spooky ghost stuff aside, going there and seeing it as like a museum
Yeah, it's
and
a
just
piece of
appreciating the
history.
history. Yeah. I think it would be
Mhm.
so fun
Mhm.
and really cool to see and just walk
Mhm.
through and, like you said, go back in time.
Yeah, it's kind of like if the Titanic didn't sink, then
Hmm.
like this kind of would be the same sort of feeling you get when you go to visit it.
Yeah.
It's just like it's from a time that like we will never ever go back to. So
Yeah.
it's
You'll
just
never
so
be able to
interesting.
experience it.
Mhm. Yeah,
It'd be
it's
cool.
super interesting. And I just love history like this. When I was
Hmm.
researching this, like we both already knew a lot about the Queen Mary, but we researched further and there's so much like intriguing history behind ships in general.
Yeah.
There's so many different stories that are just like crazy.
Hmm.
Um it's not only just the Titanic and the Queen Mary, but there's a lot of other
There's a
ships.
lot.
So eventually, I want to do an episode where we do talk about the different history behind other ships,
Other ships. That'd be cool.
um, and the story surrounding the Titanic today,
Hmm.
too, because it's kind of crazy. One of the things that I realized in doing research was that, um, like, I always thought that the remains of the ship, the Titanic, would be like on the bottom of the ocean forever.
Yeah.
But no, like it's gonna be gone in
It's
like 15 years, like completely gone.
completely gone.
I had no idea it was decomposing that
I didn't
quickly.
know that at all. And when you were researching this and I was researching the asylums and you brought
Hmm.
that up and we like fell down a
We went
rabbit
to a
hole just like
rabbit hole.
talking about this and
Yeah,
being really surprised that that would even happen because I never thought of it like you
I
said
know.
that
Cause
that it would ever be gone.
you don't think that like metal could decompose that quickly, but I
Mhm.
guess at the bottom of the ocean like that there are certain metal eating bacteria that literally decompose it within a matter of a couple, like, I guess a century because it's been down there since 1912. But
Mhm.
we
Still
also,
like
the,
that's
the other
short.
interesting thing is we didn't even find the Titanic until like a couple decades later, too.
Mhm. That's
Like,
true.
we didn't even get to go to the bottom and take a look at the wreckage. Like, by the
Till
time we
so much later.
looked, there wasn't even any like human remains left. There were
That's true.
shoes that looked like somebody had been wearing them, but there's no body, there's not even bones because it's so it, that's how quickly it gets
It
broken down at the bottom of the
mhm.
ocean,
It's
which is like
wild.
it's just fascinating to me. I don't know
Same.
why, but it's so
It's just something you
fascinating.
don't think about and then
Hmm.
you start like finding more info about how it's possible and
Right.
how quickly it actually does happen relative to history and
Yeah.
it's just crazy
Because right now we live on a planet that has the Titanic at the bottom of the ocean, but in like 15 years, people are going to be living that never
where it's
knew,
not.
like
It's just a
that,
story.
or they live when it literally won't exist anymore.
Mhm. It's
Yeah, and
wild.
it will only be a story. So it's
I
kind of
don't
cool
love
that
that.
the Queen Mary
Yeah.
is preserved. And I
Mhm.
think it is still open. You can go and visit it. I think during COVID it closed for a little
I
while.
think so too, yeah.
But I think when I was looking at the research, like there's reports of it like being refurbished
Oh,
or
okay.
like not refurbished, but it
Like
was
just
kind of breaking down a little bit, like
oh,
because it's an old
okay.
ship.
They're just
But they're trying
maintaining
their
it.
best to maintain it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's best to go basically. my point is it's best to go while you can, because you don't know how
Mhm.
long something like that will last before it's
Especially
like not
yeah,
interesting to people anymore.
especially because it's just sitting in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Barnacles and stuff, I'm sure people clean it and whatnot,
Yeah,
but that
we'll put
same
up a picture of the
degradation.
port because it's literally like locked in to the
Yeah,
port. So
it's
hopefully
crazy.
one day we'll be able to visit.
I hope. That'd be a far
Yeah,
trip out to
it would be a very
California,
far
but
trip.
it would definitely be worth it.
Yes.
I'm dying to go.
Yes. But that's pretty much the story of the Queen Mary. If you
Yep.
guys have any interesting facts that we didn't cover during the episode, please let us know.
Share them, please.
Also, I tried to look up because there's manifests for passengers on ships like all throughout
Mm-hmm.
history. I tried to look up if we had any personal connections to any passengers. I don't think I found any, but if you have any personal
Connections.
connections, let us
Yeah.
know. It would be really cool to hear about, like, maybe your ancestor was in the military and was taken, like, was a passenger on the Queen Mary. It would be super cool
Mm-hmm.
to interest, or super cool to interest. I can't. Super cool to hear about that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I
So let
agree.
us know.
I hope we can hear some cool stories about that.
Yes, definitely. Or other ships, not just the Queen Mary.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about it for today.
All right, guys. We will see you later. Thanks for tuning
Yes.
in.
See you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the Weird and Wicked podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with a friend, like, and leave a review.
And don't forget to subscribe and follow us on all of our socials so you know when the next episode is up. After decades of service as a luxury
OSIN.
it's like oh man, it's like I'm putting all the words together at this point. Mm-hmm.
Hold on, can you hear Arya at all?
I think I can.
Oh my god!
But
Let
it's
me
like
open the
not
door.
okay
Before the rest of the audio gets ruined. She's screaming out there.
Oh.
You want to be on camera?
She was being so loud right there.
What do you have to say? What
Hello,
do you have to say?
girl.
Huh? Oh my gosh, now Suki's getting the camera.
They're just taking over. I was like reading and I see the tail go by. It took a lot not to
sit down.
Oh my god.
By the next, oh god, Arya.
Boo. She's like, what?
Her tail is like whipping around. Boo. What are you doing?
She has the zoomies.
Yeah, a little. I think she's calming down, but what are you doing?